amazed that we managed to do what we did.
Well, also
So-
even harder when I was pregnant.
I tried to warn you as much as possible, but I think both of us were totally surprised by the reaction each other. And we were just so comfortable in each other's company. Dating with me or with any member of the royal family, I guess.
For years, everyone thought Prince Harry would do anything for Meghan Markle. He walked away from his family, his titles, his entire life in the palace, all to stand beside her. But here's the thing. Something's changed, and it's not what you think. Because recently, Harry made a move that caught Meghan completely off guard, and it's showing cracks in their marriage that can't be hidden anymore. It all goes back to one email Harry sent years ago. One sentence buried in that message that revealed the entire foundation their relationship was built on. And once you see what that sentence actually meant, the whole story looks completely different. This isn't just a marriage with problems. This is a marriage built on something that was shaky from the very beginning. And now it's finally starting to show. Before we get into what that email actually said, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what we're about to uncover is going to completely change how you see their entire relationship. Drop a like if you're ready to see what's really been going on. Let's dive in. Let's go back to February 2018.
How Princess Diana was present in every detail of Harry and Meghan's wedding ceremony. Meghan's wedding bouquet included forget-me-nots.
The world didn't know it yet, but Harry had just sent an email. Not a casual text to a friend, not a private note scribbled in frustration. An official email that would later come out publicly and make people question everything they thought they knew about his relationship with Meghan. Most people who saw it thought it was just routine stuff. Protective even, nothing that would raise any eyebrows. But buried in those lines was one sentence that didn't add up. Harry wrote, "I can't begin to tell you what it will say about the institution if this isn't resolved before the baby's arrival and wedding." At first glance, it seems fine, right? A concerned future father wanting things handled properly before his child enters the world. Responsible caring, exactly what you'd expect from someone like Harry. But here's the problem, the big, glaring problem that nobody could ignore once they really looked at the timeline. In February 2018, there was no baby, no announcement to the press, no carefully staged photo shoot with Meghan cradling a bump.
Waited for a first look at the royal baby boy, and moments ago, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped out in front of the cameras.
No rumors floating around anywhere, nothing. The public knew absolutely nothing about any pregnancy. So why was Harry writing about the baby's arrival months before the wedding was even supposed to happen, when no pregnancy had ever been mentioned publicly or even hinted at? Why was he using language that assumed everyone reading that email already knew a baby was coming? It's not like he wrote, "if we have a baby someday," or "when we eventually start a family." He wrote it like it was already happening, like it was a fact everyone should already be aware of. There were only two ways to read this. Either Harry was talking about some imaginary future baby, speaking in hope and dreams about a life that hadn't even started yet, or Harry genuinely believed a baby was already on the way right then, in early 2018, and he needed things sorted out before that baby arrived. And here's what makes it clear which one it was. From the way he wrote that email, the urgency pouring out of every single word,
why Queen Elizabeth was staring furiously at Meghan Markle during her wedding. Prior to that, the Queen had never been witnessed displaying anger in public.
The frustration coming through the lines, the almost panicked tone of someone who felt like time was running out. It didn't read like hope. It didn't read like a man daydreaming about future possibilities. It read like a man trying desperately to sort out a situation before the world found out about it. Think about it. When you're hoping for something in the future, you don't write with panic. You don't use phrases like, "I can't begin to tell you what it will say," as if disaster is around the corner. That's the language of someone who believes something is already real, already happening, and already heading toward a problem if it's not handled immediately. Harry wasn't planning ahead. He was reacting to something he believed was urgent and needed dealing with right now. That single line tucked inside that single email became the moment everything started to unravel. The tiny slip that revealed something much bigger was happening behind closed doors, something the public wasn't being told, a truth.
Congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
Can we start with the proposal and the actual moment of your engagement? When did it happen? How did it happen?
Harry never meant to let anyone see, especially not in writing. Because if Meghan had told Harry she was expecting back then, in late 2017 or early 2018, suddenly everything that happened next starts to make sense. The rush to get married, the pressure on everyone around them, the choices that seem to come out of nowhere and break every royal tradition. It all connects back to this one moment, this one sentence that Harry probably wishes he'd never put down in an email. Because once it was out there, once people started really looking at the dates and the timeline, the questions just kept coming. Once that email landed in the right inboxes, confusion started spreading quietly through the palace halls. Staff members who'd been around for decades, people who'd seen everything from royal drama to family situations, started exchanging glances in meetings. Something didn't feel right. Meghan had apparently told Harry she was expecting, and Harry, emotional, protective, completely overwhelmed by the news, believed her without question.
Why has Harry started to resist Meghan's touch? 3 body gestures indicate that he has already been stripped of his spirit.
And why wouldn't he? He was in love, deeply, blindly, fiercely in love. When someone you trust that much tells you something that big, you don't ask for proof. You just believe them. But inside the royal staff offices, the people responsible for planning, coordinating, and managing every single detail of royal life, things weren't adding up. There were no medical confirmations coming through the usual channels, no appointments showing up on calendars with the royal physicians, no doctor updates being passed along, no formal notifications being sent to the departments that would normally handle this kind of news. Just Harry's voice growing more urgent by the day, repeating the same phrase over and over in every conversation. It needs to be settled before the baby arrives. We don't have time. This has to be done before the baby gets here. That line started echoing through late-night phone calls, through tense planning meetings, through quiet conversations in palace hallways.
Can you tell us what's like becoming a new mum and tell us a little bit about baby Sussex, as we're calling him?
It was like the entire household had been shoved onto a clock they never agreed to follow, a countdown that only Harry seemed to see. And the more he repeated it, the more desperate he sounded. He wasn't acting like a prince making careful, measured choices about his future. He was acting like a man racing against time, like someone who believed everything could fall apart if the world found out too early. Every decision became urgent. Every conversation became tense. Every delay, no matter how small or routine, sent Harry into overdrive. Staff would suggest waiting a few weeks to finalize something, standard procedure for royal events, and Harry would push back hard. We can't wait. Don't you understand? We can't wait. His emotions were running the show, and everyone around him could feel it. This wasn't the Harry they knew. This was someone operating on pure panic. And behind the scenes, the unspoken question kept growing louder in everyone's minds.
Now she's gonna sing.
If Meghan was really pregnant, why couldn't anyone else confirm it? Where were the records? Where were the doctors? Where was the medical team that's always involved when a royal baby is on the way? Royal pregnancies don't happen in secret. There are steps to follow, procedures, people who need to be informed. But none of that was happening. It was just Harry insisting over and over that time was running out. The people closest to him started noticing something else too. Harry wasn't asking questions. He wasn't double-checking. He wasn't slowing down long enough to make sure everything actually made sense. He was operating on pure belief, on pure trust, on the assumption that what Meghan told him had to be true because she wouldn't lie to him about something this important. And that trust, that blind, unshakable trust, was about to push him into choices that would change the entire course of his life. Choices he'd make in a rush, under pressure, believing he was protecting his future family.
Drive round in a Range Rover. I thought this would be a nice way to see LA. All right, we're gonna have a great day. Just pay the...
Not realizing that the urgency driving him forward might not have been rooted in reality at all. Royal weddings don't happen fast. They just don't. There's planning, there's coordinating with security teams and media outlets from around the world. When William married Kate, they had over a year to plan. Most royal weddings take at least that long, sometimes longer. It's not just about picking flowers and choosing a cake. It's about managing an event that the entire planet will be watching. Every detail gets examined, every choice gets approved. Every moment gets thought through down to the second. Harry and Meghan's wedding was planned in 6 months. 6. That's not just fast for a royal wedding. That's almost unheard of. And the entire time, the pressure wasn't coming from tradition or the usual palace planning that normally runs these things. It was coming from Harry himself. Every meeting, every planning session, every conversation about timelines and logistics, Harry kept circling back to the same point.
Meghan Markle became the Duchess of Sussex when she wed Prince Harry at St. George's Chapel in Windsor in 2018.
They had to move faster. They couldn't afford to wait. Everything needed to be locked down and finalized as soon as possible. Senior staff members, people who'd coordinated royal events for decades, started raising concerns quietly among themselves. Why the rush? What's driving this? Royal weddings are supposed to be celebrations, joyful occasions, planned with care and precision. But this didn't feel like joy. This felt like panic dressed up in wedding planning. Harry wasn't excited about the details. He was anxious about the timeline. He wasn't savoring the process. He was trying to get through it as fast as humanly possible. And the phrase that kept coming up in every conversation, the one that made everyone pause and exchange uncomfortable glances, was the same one from the email "before the baby arrives." Harry said it in meetings with wedding planners. He said it to family members asking why they couldn't push the date back a few months for better weather. He said it to staff suggesting they take more time to handle security concerns properly.
Had a chance to see LA. Now, before I start
We can't wait. It needs to happen before the baby arrives. But here's what made the whole situation even stranger. The public still didn't know about any pregnancy. There'd been no announcement, no confirmation, nothing official whatsoever. So to everyone on the outside, Harry just seemed weirdly focused on getting married as quickly as possible for no clear reason. And to the people on the inside, the ones who'd heard his private conversations and seen the urgency in his eyes, it felt like they were all being pulled into a race where nobody else knew what the finish line actually was. Even the Queen started asking questions. Multiple times, she requested clarity on why everything was moving so fast. She'd been through countless royal weddings, understood the process better than anyone, and she knew this pace wasn't normal. But Harry's answers were always the same: emotional, defensive, insistent. He needed this done. He needed Meghan protected.
A Suits co-star has revealed Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's wedding didn't smell as pretty as it looked.
He needed everything finalized before it was too late. Too late for what exactly? That part stayed vague. But the desperation in his voice was crystal clear. The wedding became less about celebration and more about a deadline Harry couldn't miss. Staff worked overtime, scrambling to coordinate details that would normally take months to arrange. Security teams rushed to lock down the details. The chapel got booked, the guest lists got finalized, the global media got their camera positions confirmed. Everything moved at breakneck speed because Harry wasn't giving anyone time to slow down or question whether this pace made sense. And through it all, Meghan stayed calm. While Harry was rushing, she seemed focused and composed. While he pressured everyone around him to move faster, she glided through planning sessions like someone who had all the time in the world. The contrast was striking. Harry looked like a man trying to outrun something. Meghan looked like a woman who already knew exactly how everything would unfold. Two very different energies driving toward the same destination. A wedding that would lock Harry into choices he made while believing time was running out. Choices made under pressure he thought was real. Choices that would define the rest of his life. Then something changed. Almost overnight, the urgency vanished. That frantic energy that had been driving Harry for months, the constant pressure to move faster and get everything done immediately, it just stopped. After the wedding in May 2018, Harry seemed to exhale. The panic that had been radiating off him for half a year suddenly disappeared. And the people around him, the staff who'd been working overtime to keep up with his demands, they noticed. They absolutely noticed. Word started spreading quietly through the palace that Meghan wasn't pregnant after all. Or at least, not in the way Harry had believed back in February when he sent that email the timeline people had been counting on.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle broke the wedding cake tradition at their royal wedding.
The one that had everyone racing against an invisible clock. It didn't match up anymore. There was no baby coming in the immediate weeks or months after the wedding. No announcement went out. No bump appeared. The urgency that had consumed Harry's entire world for 6 months turned out to be based on something that wasn't actually happening the way he thought it was. Staff members started doing the math in their heads. If Meghan had been pregnant in February 2018 when Harry wrote that email, she would have been showing by the wedding in May. There would have been a baby by summer or early fall at the latest. But summer came and went, fall arrived, winter rolled around, still nothing. The royal physicians who would normally be involved in care for a royal baby, they hadn't been brought into the loop. The medical team that's always present for royal pregnancies, they weren't coordinating anything. It was like the pregnancy Harry had been so focused on protecting just faded away, and Harry's whole demeanor shifted along with it.
Harry and Meghan were the first to invite an American speaker to a royal wedding.
The man who'd been wound tighter than a spring for months suddenly seemed quieter. Almost deflated, he'd pushed his family, pressured the palace staff, rushed through wedding planning at a pace that broke every royal tradition, all because he believed he was running out of time to protect his future child. And now, with the wedding behind him and no baby on the horizon, the weight of what he'd done seemed to settle on him differently. He'd gotten what he wanted, the marriage was done, but the reason he'd been so desperate to make it happen had disappeared. People close to Harry described him during this period as withdrawn, not angry, not lashing out, just quieter than usual, like someone processing information they didn't want to accept. He'd made massive life decisions at lightning speed. Decisions that changed his relationship with his family and his role in the family, all while believing he had no choice but to move fast. And now that the urgency was gone, he was left sitting with the choices he'd made while the clock was supposedly ticking. Meghan, on the other hand, seemed perfectly fine.
And the actual moment of your engagement, when did it happen? How did it happen?
It happened a few weeks ago.
While Harry looked like he was coming down from months of stress, she appeared calm and settled. She'd gotten her fairy tale wedding. She'd become the Duchess of Sussex. She'd secured her place in the royal family. And whether or not there had actually been a baby coming in those early months, she'd achieved everything she set out to achieve. The wedding had happened. The ring was on her finger. The title was hers. Everything was in place. It wasn't until May 2019, over a year after the wedding, that Archie was actually born. A full 13 months after Harry had written that email talking about the baby's arrival like it was imminent. 13 months after he'd pushed everyone around him to move faster because time was running out. The timeline didn't add up, and the people who'd been there through the whole rushed process knew it. They'd watched Harry operate in panic mode for months, only to see that panic dissolve once the wedding was over and nothing immediate actually happened.
I wouldn't really care what Meghan tried to say or do, because Meghan...
The question nobody wanted to say out loud, but everyone was thinking, became impossible to ignore. Had Harry been given information that wasn't quite accurate? Had someone told him what he needed to hear to get him to move at exactly the speed required to lock him into marriage before he had time to slow down and think clearly? Or had it all been a genuine misunderstanding, a miscommunication that turned into months of unnecessary urgency? Either way, the outcome was the same. Harry had made his choices. The wedding had happened. Meghan was now permanently part of the royal family. And whether the February 2018 pregnancy was real, a misunderstanding, or mentioned at exactly the right moment to create the pressure Harry needed to feel, it had worked. Harry was committed. The urgency had gotten him exactly where he needed to be. And by the time he realized the timeline didn't make sense, everything was already set in stone.
But the friend who introduced you, was she trying to set you up?
Yes, it was definitely a setup. It was a blind date.
When Meghan's pregnancy was finally announced officially in October 2018, 5 months after the wedding, The timing raised even more questions than it answered. The palace released a statement saying they were expecting their first child in spring 2019. That would put conception around July or August 2018, months after the wedding, months after Harry had been insisting everything needed finalized before the baby arrived. People started doing the math. If Meghan got pregnant in summer 2018, what was Harry talking about in February? Why had he spent 6 months acting like time was running out if the actual pregnancy didn't even exist yet? The official announcement made that earlier urgency look completely unconnected to reality. Staff members who'd worked overtime to accommodate Harry's insistence on speed couldn't help but feel caught up in something that didn't add up.
An expert has revealed the circumstances under which Prince Harry and Meghan would consider returning to royal duties. According to
They'd compress timelines that normally take months, all because Harry convinced them there was genuine urgency. Now, looking at the actual timeline, that urgency seemed to have appeared from nowhere. Then came Archie's birth in May 2019. Count backwards from that date, and the math takes you to conception around August 2018. 3 months after the wedding, 6 months after Harry sent that email. The baby Harry had been so focused on protecting in February 2018 didn't exist yet. Wouldn't be conceived until well after the wedding was over and the pressure had mysteriously disappeared. So what had Harry actually been reacting to in those early months? What information drove him to push so hard and make such permanent decisions while believing time was running out? If the actual pregnancy didn't start until summer 2018, what was the February urgency really about? The people closest to Harry saw a pattern.
It's the royal dress causing quite a sensation. In the just released official engagement photos, you can see
He'd been told something that made him believe he needed to act immediately. That information triggered months of intense decision-making. Then, once the wedding was secured, the supposed urgency evaporated. No immediate baby, no situation needing handling. Just Harry processing that he'd restructured his entire life around a timeline that turned out to be off. And Meghan had exactly what she'd wanted. The title, the platform, the global recognition. The wedding had happened at lightning speed, but now there was no rush. The intense energy that consumed Harry for months never seemed to affect her the same way. She'd stayed calm while he was rushing, composed while he made permanent choices under pressure. Looking back, the real pregnancy timeline made one thing clear. Whatever drove Harry's urgency in early 2018 wasn't based on medical reality. It was based on information he believed. Information that pushed him to act in ways he might not have otherwise.
Watch closely and notice the small details that many people missed when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle arrived at the ceremony.
And by the time the actual pregnancy happened, everything was already set. The urgency had done what it needed to do, even if the timeline didn't match up. Once you see the timeline laid out completely, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. February 2018, Harry mentions the baby's arrival like it's imminent. 6 months of urgency mode. May 2018, wedding happens. June through August, urgency completely disappears. October 2018, actual pregnancy announced May 2019. Archie is born. When you line up those dates, the story is pretty clear. Harry operated for half a year believing he was protecting a pregnancy that didn't exist yet. He changed his relationship with his family, rushed through major decisions, and committed himself to marriage at breakneck speed, all while thinking he had no choice. And Meghan was the only one who could have created that sense of urgency, the only one whose life changed significantly.
Harry and Meghan, the once loved couple, are now reportedly facing the end of their marriage. Divorce.
From Harry making permanent decisions as fast as possible. Here's where people start asking difficult questions. Did Meghan share information that wasn't accurate to move things along faster? Or was it genuine misunderstanding, maybe a false positive test, maybe miscommunication that got out of hand? The answer changes everything about how you view their relationship. If the information wasn't accurate, then everything that came after happened for different reasons than people thought. Harry didn't choose to rush into marriage because he simply wanted to. He rushed because he believed he had to, because he thought he was protecting his future child. That's not the same as making a choice with all the facts. But even if it started as genuine misunderstanding, the question becomes what happened next. Harry clearly continued believing a baby was coming for months. If Meghan realized the situation was different at some point,
Me here. We are going to do a little celebrity reading. I have been asked by 3 different people to do a Meghan Markle.
during those months, the question is whether that information reached Harry while he was still making major decisions. Either way, something doesn't quite line up. Either Harry was acting on information that wasn't complete, or he was continuing to act on information that may have changed. Both scenarios suggest Harry made decisions under pressure based on something that turned out differently than expected. What makes this pattern even more noticeable is what happened after the wedding. The second Harry was committed, the urgency vanished. If there'd been a real medical situation driving that pressure, it wouldn't have disappeared. The moment the wedding ended, medical situations don't pause because you achieved a goal, but the urgency consuming Harry for months stopped almost immediately after he said, "I do." Meghan achieved everything that came with that timeline. She became a duchess, got the global platform, secured her place in one of the most famous families in the world.
Line on Cosmo blares. Meghan Markle just majorly broke one of the Queen's style rules.
All in 6 months instead of the year or more it normally takes. 6 months where Harry was too focused on urgency to slow down and ask more questions. By the time Archie was born in May 2019, over a year after the wedding, the truth about the timeline was undeniable. Harry had been operating based on one understanding for months, and the actual timeline showed something different. He'd made permanent decisions while believing something that didn't match what actually happened. That's the pattern. Urgency created, decisions rushed, wedding secured, urgency disappeared, actual timeline revealed. Each step happening in a sequence that moved Harry forward without giving him space to slow down and process. And whether it happened intentionally or just worked out that way, the outcome was the same. Harry ended up married based on an understanding that didn't match the timeline that actually played out. After Archie was born, things should have settled.
It's beginning to look a lot like PR season. Meghan Markle just announced her brand new Netflix holiday special, With Love.
New parents, royal baby, the world watching with happiness and excitement. But behind closed doors, people close to Harry noticed he seemed different. He appeared quieter, more reserved, like someone thinking through something he couldn't quite put into words. The man who'd been so focused on protecting his family just a year earlier now seemed to be processing the reality of everything that had happened. Friends who'd known Harry for years started seeing changes. He'd always been the fun one, the prince who connected with people easily, who laughed genuinely and engaged with the world around him. But after Archie's birth, especially once the initial excitement died down, Harry seemed like he was adjusting to his new life in ways that looked different from what people expected. And his relationship with his family, which had already been complicated during the wedding period, didn't immediately improve. You'd think a new baby would bring people together, create moments of healing and connection.
Meghan Markle is making a splash after stepping out on International Women's Day to an adorable encounter.
But the distance that had started building when things were moving so fast didn't close right away. The adjustments everyone needed to make took time. Looking at the timeline from the outside, some people couldn't help but wonder if Harry had started to see the dates differently. February 2018, the email about urgency. May 2018, the wedding. October 2018, the pregnancy announcement. May 2019, Archie's birth. The math was there for anyone to see, and it raised questions about what had driven those early months of pressure. But those aren't easy things to talk about, especially when you're already married, already have a child, already committed to the path you're on. So Harry seemed to process things privately. He became more careful about what he shared publicly, less open than he'd been before. The charities he'd been passionate about got less visible attention. The family relationships that had been close became more complicated. His public presence shifted into something more guarded.
No wonder Queen Elizabeth refused to smile at Harry's wedding. Meghan's dress really upset her. A cunning fox can't hide its smelly tail.
Meghan, meanwhile, seemed to settle into her role. She had the platform she'd wanted. She was making headlines. Her fashion choices became global news. Her presence got quoted in major publications. She'd gone from actress to one of the most recognized women in the world, and she seemed comfortable with that transition. While Harry was becoming more private, Meghan was becoming more public, using opportunities to build her presence and share her perspectives. The difference between them became more noticeable as time went on. They'd appear together at events, smile for cameras, present as a united couple, but people who watched them closely could see they had different comfort levels with their new reality. Harry seemed to be adjusting to a life that looked very different from what he'd known before. Meghan seemed to be embracing the opportunities that came with her new position. Then came the decision to step back from royal duties, to leave the UK, to move to California and build a new life with different expectations and structure.
Give Meghan the advice. As Markle navigates protocol and plans for the big day in May, Kate has been by her side, showing her the royal...
Harry talked about it as creating the right environment for his family, finding a place where they could have more privacy and control over their lives. For people who'd been following their story, it represented a major shift in how Harry saw his role and his future. In California, away from the palace environment, away from the family dynamics that had become strained, Harry and Meghan could build something different. They could focus on the projects they wanted to pursue, the causes they cared about, the life they wanted to create for Archie. It was a fresh start in a new place with new possibilities. But change doesn't erase history. The questions about timelines, about what drove those early decisions, about why things moved so fast in early 2018, those questions don't disappear just because you're in a different location. They're part of the story, part of what shaped how everything unfolded. And for Harry, living this new life that was supposed to be about freedom and making his own choices.
Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's wedding appeared to be a flawless fairy tale. According to one royal insider, apparently Meghan did...
There seemed to be an ongoing process of making sense of how he'd gotten here. The interviews they gave, the projects they launched, the causes they championed, all of it showed two people trying to define their lives on their own terms. Harry talking about wanting independence, about making choices that felt right for his family, about building something authentic. Those themes came up repeatedly in how he presented his decisions. The people who'd been there through the wedding period, who remembered the timeline and the urgency and how quickly everything had moved, they watched Harry's journey with mixed feelings. They'd seen him operate under intense pressure. They'd watched him make major choices very quickly. And now they were watching him navigate the life that had resulted from those choices. Looking at where Harry and Meghan are now, years after that rushed wedding, the path they took to get here becomes part of understanding their story. The urgency of early 2018, the wedding that happened faster than anyone expected. The pregnancy announcement that came months later, the move to California, the new life they're building. Each piece connects to the next, showing how decisions made under pressure in one moment shape everything that comes after. So that's the timeline, the email, the urgency, and the dates that didn't quite match up. If this gave you a new perspective,